Hey everyone, it's your friendly 4 extraordinaire here, and I'm here with an interesting video because as much as I've praised Humankind in the past, I also wanted to critique it because as it is a very ambitious game, it no doubt has its flaws, and one of those particular flaws are definitely the AI. So I wanted to talk about the AI, some of my problems with them, and I also wanted to see if you guys had similar problems with them, if you agree or disagree, and also in the comment section after this video, please let me know just in general what your experience has been with Humankind, because I definitely have walked away from Humankind with a kind of the idea that it's definitely different from Civ 6, and I think that the two games can coexist in the same genre despite popular belief. So I want to get right to the heart of the issue. I don't want to waste your guys' time, and I just want to talk about my big main complaints, if you will, or criticisms about the AI. First of all, the AI has a very, very hard problem deciding early on whether or not it's going to be passive or aggressive. Thankfully, in the game, the gameplay footage you're watching, I had a very isolated start, so I didn't even have to interact with any of the AI until far later on, though the AI still decided to declare war on me on the classical era. And my problem isn't that the AI once in a while will declare war, but it's that early on, and this is just early on, I've noticed later on the AI becomes much more passive, but that's another issue in of itself. But early on, the AI, they'll build forts, they'll be very, very aggressive, they'll burn your forts, and they just do not have a care in the world about where your unit is. They'll just march straight through your unit and they'll just automatically attack, even if they are very friendly and cordial with you, which I find to be very, very odd. I don't know if this is just intentional to kind of give the AI a foot up and really give the player a challenge, but I just found it to be very, very immersion breaking, considering I can make a peace deal with one of the AI and then they'll just automatically attack my scouts the next turn because they just happen to wander across their path. And kind of going off of that, I found that the AI, just from observing them across quite a few games, their personalities, depending on what they're assigned, particularly if they're aggressive or if they're passive, that really influences how they behave early on. And just in general, I find that aggressive AI, well, they do have some success earlier on in the early game. Later on, once they start going on against other alliances for other players, they can either be very successful or they'll be immediately beaten down, possibly by the player, just because their AI personalities are kind of tuning them and forcing them to act in a specific way that I find to be very, very unorganic, and it can honestly be, again, game breaking, and it just really breaks the immersion for the player because for example, the AI may be doing really, really well, and then they make the stupid decision to go to war just because their personality is kind of demanding it of them, or it's coding them to act in that specific way, and it just destroys their chances at actually being a real threat to the player, even though they were kind of performing the best prior to said war. And from that point, again, I do want to segue into my next problem with the AI, and that is the fact that once you've really beaten down the AI, they do not care at all. They'll be friendly with you, they'll even buddy up with an alliance, and aside from some of those aggressive AIs, there's not going to be any threat to you, and really, unless the AI is very, very competent at city planning, which I kind of find to be a bit of a dice roll depending on their personalities again, the AI just really, really can kind of drop the ball later on, and that just makes them very, very uninteresting. And while they have certain functionalities or certain areas where they do perform better than Civ 6's AI, and again, I don't want to compare Civ 6 to Humankind too much in this video. I want to talk purely about Humankind's AI differences, but there's just so many things that can go wrong, again, kind of like with Civ 6 in terms of the AI department and where the AI can really fuck up and drop the ball. One of these particular areas where the AI really, really struggles is that they'll go ahead and start with a really good culture, perhaps the Harappans, and I find that the AI really loves the Harappans, probably because of their food bonuses or some of their cultural biases, kind of like with how some AIs are aggressive or pacifist. Some also have preferences towards agrarian cultures or aesthetic cultures, I found, but they really, really struggle when it comes to planning in the long term, like with putting down districts, making alliances, and then also just going to war with their neighbors rather suddenly for no reason at all, even if they are the same military strength. And again, with the kind of talk about their cultural planning, I found that they just really, really have a rough time with going from something like aesthete. Maybe it suits them starting off as the Zhou early on, but then they'll just make a random choice to probably like start off as another aesthete when they transcend to the classical era the classical era as the Mauryans. And then they also have weird things where they'll go and supplement their agrarian culture with another agrarian culture, despite the fact that they don't have enough quarters to kind of house that population. So they're wasting a lot of those agrarian bonuses. And I could go on and on. I've only found that kind of with militarist factions, you can easily go straight from militarist to militarist without that much of a problem because they kind of complement each other. But other than that, I found that just going straight from like builder to builder or agrarian to agrarian, it's just kind of opens up a lot of problems for the AI because they don't really know how to plan around that overflow of the same type of bonus where they either deal with a lot of culture or a lot of food or just a lot of excess production, and they just really do not know what to do aside from maybe spam down a few districts and then just go to war against the nearby player. Though, with as critical as I have been about Humankind's AI, I will say that they are definitely an improvement from other strategy games, kind of like with Civ 6, but they do have a lot of work to do. For example, I have found that the AI is a lot better at adapting with their religion than Civ 6 instead of just spamming it. And I know I said I wouldn't kind of compare the two genres, but I think it's such an important point to note that Humankind really has learned from other genres, and I think they are definitely trying to improve, especially with the amount of bug fixes and whatnot in their recent patches and just trying to get the game up to shape, possibly for future expansion. So I'm really excited to see what the devs over at Amplitude do with Humankind in the future, and I hope you guys will be staying with me on our journey to kind of explore Humankind and really kind of hope to realize its full potential. So if you guys do like the channel and you like this video, as impromptu as it is, I just felt that I had to make it just to kind of air some of my grievances with the AI. But if you do, again, like the video, please leave a like, just help support the channel, and then subscribe. We are trying to hit 1,000 subscribers by November, and if you can do that, that'd be very, very appreciated. So thank you guys again so much for watching. This has been 4 Extraordinaire, and I hope you guys have a great rest of the week. All right, peace.